The Second Amendment right to bear arms is a very controversial topic in today's society. We are wondering how students and teachers feel about teachers having guns in the classroom. Will this be a good or bad idea? We have researched the Supreme Court case Heller v. D.C., which protests a person's right to possess firearms without a connection with service in the militia. In Lopez v. United States, a student brought a gun to school, and authorities put him in jail for violating the Free School Zones Act of 1990. Prohibits knowingly possessing a firearm within 1,000 feet of a school zone. The students won the case, arguing that the Gun-Free School Zone Act was an unconstitutional exercise of Congress's power. Schools were controlled by state and local governments. President Trump has said he agrees with teachers having guns in the classroom because it protects the Second Amendment right.
And by the way, it was a gun-free zone. I will tell you, if you had a couple of the teachers or somebody with guns in that room, you would have been a hell of a lot better off. You would have been a hell of a lot better off.
This caused social media to blow out of proportion. I'm sure you have heard about the school shooting in Parkland, Florida at Marjory Stoneman High School. Nicholas Cruz, a 19-year-old student, shot and killed 17 students on February 14, 2018. So many school shootings have happened over the years. In 2012, there were more than 1,600 mass shootings, killing more than 1,800 people and wounding more than 6,400. The U.S. estimated in 2007 that the number of civilian-owned firearms in the U.S. was 88.8 guns per 100 people, meaning that there are almost one privately owned gun per American.
Research from the Department of Homeland Security shows that the average school shooting incident lasts 12.5 minutes, whereas the average police response time is 18. This set of facts is one of the arguments called on when discussing the relevance and importance of teachers being able to carry firearms during school. Currently, there are 18 states that allow or do not specifically prohibit teachers from carrying firearms. Some of these include California, Hawaii, Iowa, New York, and Utah, each having slightly different rules and regulations on how the guns may be used and under what circumstances. For example, California teachers require the approval of the superintendent, while Rhode Island requires teachers to have a concealed carry license to exercise this right. Utah, in fact, has allowed their teachers to carry guns for the last 10 years, and they haven't experienced a K-12 school shooting since.
Drop your gun!
This is the point of view of an elementary school principal firing at a mock gunman during a simulated school shooting. He's one of more than 1,000 educators from 12 states who take this 3-day firearms course in rural Ohio called Faster Saves Lives.
Nicely done.
In the video, you saw teachers undergoing firearms training to better equip themselves in case an armed intruder were to enter the building. Ohio is arming their teachers with the proper knowledge and training, offering free classes through a program called FASTER, which stands for Faculty Administrator Safety Training and Emergency Response, and other states are beginning to catch on. This class includes 26 hours of hands-on training over 3 days, which exceeds the requirements of the Ohio Peace Officer Training Academy. In addition to combat training, participants in the FASTER programs also undergo combat casualty training, so they know how to handle an emergency situation before first responders can get there, and can tend to anyone who might be wounded in the meantime. This program recognizes that they are not training their teachers to replace law enforcement or emergency response teams, but they want their teachers to be able to help themselves before the police can get there. This is especially true in rural districts, where their first responders can be as much as 30 minutes away. Let's look at a current student's opinion on the matter. Do you think the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms should be extended to teachers on school property?
I do think that it should be extended to school property, but only if teachers are mentally screened and if they're properly trained for guns and are able to handle situations in which an intruder comes into the school.
In 1997, a high school principal in Missouri was able to do just what these courses are trying to teach. He apprehended a student who had opened fire using a pistol he always kept in his truck. This principal, Mr. Myrick, didn't even have to fire the gun to subdue the shooter. The sight of the gun alone was enough to scare the student away. Many advocates for arming teachers believe even the knowledge of staff having firearms would deter many possible threats and ultimately keep our schools from suffering through more tragedies. Nearly 3/4 of the nation's teachers say they would personally not bring a firearm into their school if allowed. In Missouri, where a teacher arming bill has been proposed, several superintendents oppose the idea of arming teachers. These administrators believe this idea to be a knee-jerk reaction to the Sandy Hook shooting, and they are concerned about the effects of responding to that incident purely out of fear. Their position stands that arming teachers will not stop the violence but promote it, leading to even more incidents with shootings.
If I were allowed to have a gun in the classroom, if any teacher was allowed to have a gun in the classroom, I would quit education. I think that there are way too many variables that are in play that would keep having a gun in a classroom anything but safe.
As studied by Berkowitz and LePage, being in the presence of a gun leads to more aggression and what is called the weapons effect. Teachers have been arrested for murders, but are even more commonly involved in threatening their own students. In one situation, a teacher threatened to shoot up her school. Another teacher told his students that he would line them up against a wall and shoot them. Although these may seem really as threats, there is an endless sea of possibilities that could occur with teachers were given the right to bear arms. Not only are students at risk of teachers mishandling their power, the students have even more access to guns and the opportunity to use them in a school environment. The fact is that training programs are not only inadequate, but they can also cost up to $1,200 per teacher. In Utah, 200 teachers recently completed a standard concealed weapon firearms training course that was not specifically tailored for school settings. Some classes consist of only a few hours of training and are no different than a standard conceal and carry class the public may take. Courses also often use plastic guns in a conference room instead of real guns with live ammunition. In one instance, a firearm training officer accidentally shot one of his students in the foot. The question stands, why are we arming our teachers? The University of New Hampshire Crimes Against Children Research Center estimates that the chances of a student being killed or harmed while at school is 1 in a million. The amount of mass shootings have been in fact decreasing over the years, not increasing. The school takes on responsibility and liability for every outcome possible. Moving into the future, we have to consider these possibilities. Is adding guns to a school truly the best option?
As we can see, the Second Amendment right to bear arms causes a lot of controversy. We know there are pros and cons to teachers having guns in the classroom. Pros include self-defense, protecting students from school shooters, less officers needed in the school, and learning to use guns properly. The cons, as we have mentioned, include training needed, possibly more violence, and kids could get a hold of teachers' guns. So after this video, did all this information change your ideas about gun violence?
I think that school shootings are happening more and more because people are getting more and more disconnected from each other. I think kids see each other as usernames and profiles more than they do as actual living beings. When I walk into a classroom after the bell rings to start it off, it's completely silent. Everyone's like this on their phones. Nobody's talking to each other. And I think that is what is at the heart of why these things continue to happen in our country. So for precautionary measures, we just need to start talking to each other. We need to put our devices down. We need to connect, and we need to see each other as humans.